Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in to today's live stream legal show. I'm Judy the YouTube Lawyer, and our special guest today is an attorney and a very well-known mediator from Charlotte, North Carolina. He graduated from Wake Forest University Law School. His name is Ketan Soni. So let's welcome him to the show. Thanks for being here, Ketan.
Hey, Judy. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
Sure. And did I pronounce your name right? I should have asked you that.
It's like Nathan with a K, Ketan.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
That's all right.
Nathan with a K. Okay, great.
There's not an exact translation in like English from Gujarati, so that's the best approximation I have.
Oh, okay.
So Nathan with a K, everyone can remember that. It's pretty easy.
Okay, great. Hi, Dr. Seb. Hi, Tony. Thanks for being here. Okay, well, can you start out by telling our viewers a little bit about yourself, your family background, where you grew up and stuff?
Yeah. So I've been in Charlotte since 2004 now, but I was actually born in Charlotte, and I'm first gen here in the States. My parents came from India, Northwest India, in a region called Gujarat, and moved. They moved here in early 70s in Charlotte. I was born here when I was 2.5 years old. We moved to Chicago suburbs, and I got to be careful about how I say that because people from Chicago, you can say Chicago, if you're not from Chicago, you can say Chicago, but the friends I have in Chicago say you did not grow up in Chicago, you grew up in the suburbs. So it was the suburbs of Chicago, and spent 20 years there, and decided that the cold and the lack of scenery and the 9 months of winter were too much for me. So I came back to North Carolina in 97. I did do undergraduate in Illinois, University of Illinois, Champaign.
Oh,
got a philosophy philosophy degree, which is, I think, weird and interesting because I don't really remember a lot about the philosophy stuff because I took a bunch of math classes and science classes before deciding that philosophy is easier. So this is a different time in my life. So whenever I start spelling off like differential equations and chemical formulas, people look at me strangely because they know the philosophy background. But I think it goes hand in hand. So finished undergrad a little bit early in '96, and then tried to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and decided that I wasn't ready to enter the workforce, so I had to pick a career path that would let me go to grad school. So it wasn't going to be med school, despite all the Indian family protestations that I should go to med school, and it was going to be law school because I was more rebellious in that time, and most Indians aren't lawyers or weren't at that time, and so that seemed like a safe but rebellious path. So it was going to be law school, and I picked applying to law schools primarily by how the proximity to a coast. So I knew I didn't want to be in the Midwest anymore. I wanted to try something else somewhere, and not random law schools. I just picked good ones, but they happened to be near the coast. So ended up applying to and getting accepted to Wake Forest School of Law, and started there in the fall of 1997.
Okay,
so
cool.
Haven't left North Carolina since. Don't plan to leave North Carolina for, even though there's good and bad parts of the state, the good far outweigh the bad. And maybe bad is the wrong way to say it, but the things that need more work. And I've been in Charlotte now since 2004. So what was that? 17 years? 17 years. Yeah. 17 years in Charlotte, back in Charlotte. And what's funny to me, at least, is I live 3 blocks away from where I was born. So I can really say I've come full circle.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's cool to learn more about you because I really didn't know anything about your background, but I was born in Chicago, but we moved away when I was a baby. So I really don't know anything about it other than visiting a couple of times, but it's a cool place to be. So
really cool place to visit. There's a lot of good stuff about Chicago. I think at that time of my life, I was really just trying to branch off my own away from everybody and see what I could do, whether I could survive, whether I liked something else. And so it was kind of multi-layered decision. But I do love Chicago. My best friend that I've known since 5 years old is there. But I told him I'm never moving back. So I'll visit a lot. Not going to live there again.
Well, did you experience culture shock when you went from Illinois to Wake Forest, which is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina? Kind of like an old-timey Southern town, right?
Yes. So we'll probably get to this at some point later on down the road, but yes, definitely culture shock. My personality traits are I'm pretty introverted, so I do a lot of observing, and so while it was a shock, it kind of went hand in hand with my ability to just see different cultures. But this is one memory that I have of coming to Winston-Salem. One of the first times I went to a grocery store, 20 something years ago, there's a lady smoking a cigarette in the grocery store in the produce aisle. And I was like, what is going on here right now?
Well, at least it wasn't chewing tobacco.
Yeah, right. I was like, even I guess chewing tobacco would have been better because at least it's not spewing ash all over the fruit and the vegetable that I'm about to buy.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, a product of North Carolina and Winston-Salem. There's a lot of tobacco. Winston is a great town, lots of culture there, but it had this, Wachovia Bank used to be there, right? So it had a bigger city vibe to it in some places, but then it definitely had that ruralish feeling in other places. And then you had the university layered on top of that, right? And so the university was very well known, but you also have Wake Forest Baptist Hospital, and the University of the law school, and a really great business program, right? MBA program. So depending on where you were in Winston, there were like just shockingly different people that you ran into. So I remember this too. Like I think most of the people when I went to the parking lot at Wake, parked my car at Wake Law, it was like BMWs and Mercedes and all that kind of stuff all over the place. I'm like, why are these law students driving these cars? But then you go to that grocery store I was talking about, and it's nothing like that. So it was a culture shock, but also for my eyes, it was plenty of new input and information. So I kind of loved it from that perspective. I can analyze it in my own head and see how I felt about it all. But overall, I mean, because I said to you, I'm never leaving North Carolina, that should be an indication of my experience there and everywhere else I've gone to since being here. So can't complain. I'm not going to.
So are your parents still in Illinois, and what did they do? Like, I guess they're not in the legal field, right?
My parents, my mom passed away in 2004. My dad, after that, moved here from Chicago, from the suburbs, because my sister at that time was in LA, and I take that back. My sister was in Chicago, but he wanted to get out of Chicago to kind of not be reminded of all the bad memories from my mom passing, right? So he came down here, and I encouraged him to come live with me. And so we spent a few years together until he kind of got back on his feet. But that guy is amazing. He came to the States with I think $50 or less in his pocket. Didn't know anybody. He was the first of his family or my mom's family to come to the United States. I take that back. My uncle was here too, meaning my mom's side, but he was at Texas A&M, so he was nowhere near where my dad was. Yeah. And he had to figure it out. I mean, that I can't even fathom what that would feel like. Me moving to North Carolina is nothing compared to moving across the entire globe with no one to talk to or know and figure it out. But he did, and he's a civil engineer and retired at this point. Been retired for 15 years, and he just kind of worked his way up, and probably like a lot of other Asian families, first generation in the States, saved every dime he made every dollar stretch as far as he could, made sure that, even though we weren't, rich or overflowing with money, we never had anything to want for. We had everything we need and more, and never felt like we were missing out on something. And so, and my mom worked for United Parcel Service for almost 30 years.
Oh.
So they figured out their schedule where one of them would be home all the time. Because my mom, I think, started work at 6, then would be home by 3. So we would never have to do after school and all that kind of stuff. And so they made it work, and they gave my sister and I really, solid foundation and took care of all our needs. And it was just a really, really good time growing up. And it's, I think today, at least where I am, it's different. It's harder. It feels harder to do what they did, because I also felt like they spent all their time with us, and I struggle with making sure kiddos come first and then work second. But I can't always do that. I think, well, I'm just not always successful with that. So, like uh, in my decade of life, I'm more reflective about how well of a job they did when we were growing up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you really appreciate their sacrifices when you think of, it was weird moving to North Carolina, but imagine going from India to Chicago, Illinois, or wherever they wound up.
Yeah. And as kids, right, we don't have any perspective on what that really means. But as I get older,
and in the 70s or 60s or whenever your dad came.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and at that time, right, he was, I think, not the first Indians by any means, but that was the first, like, probably big push of migration or immigration from India to the U.S. In mass, right? So after he came, immigration was a little easier than it is today, and he was able to bring a ton of our family members over time, and they would just stay with us for 6 months, find a job, get established, find their own apartment, and then move on. So again, like, to his credit and my mom's credit, they were the first ones kind of treading that path. And in fact, my mom stayed in India for a year so they were even apart when my sister was young for a year, while he kind of figured out what to do in the States. And then we just brought family member after family member after family member over. And so now when I go to the Chicago area, so kind of Chicago, Wisconsin, and Detroit, I think there's something like 450 extended family members all in that region.
No way. That's crazy.
Yeah. So when you go to weddings,
your whole village is there. Yeah.
Right. And so when you go to weddings, right, it's like 600 people. Wedding is not enough. You need more. They need more.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of impact I think they were able to have across their families. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Great. Okay. Well, so a lot of questions have come in about mediation and your legal career and stuff. So let's switch over to talking about, what was your experience like at Wake Forest University, and how do you think you got admitted? Like, how would you advise someone that's thinking about Wake Forest Law School?
I had a really good experience at Wake Forest. At that time, not a lot of, it was mostly white people. I think I was there's one other Indian person, and I think he might have been, I think he was, anyway, one other Indian person. At that time, I think there's only 1 or 2 African-American people. So probably more diversity now, but the school did a great job of educating. They really, and at that time, the business school and the law school were in the same building. I think they're not anymore. But they really focused on kind of the practical aspects as well as the theory pieces of the puzzle. And they had some, visiting professors and all that kind of stuff. But getting in, I think was, if you think about going to law school, some advice would be, it's not just about, you really the more you can say, here's what I want to do and here's why, the better success you're going to have. So, and I didn't realize all this way back, 20 something years ago, that of the importance of really being able to put down on paper and explain in writing on a on a piece of paper that someone else is going to read what it is that you want to do and why. And for me back then, it was really about finding, some career path, but not having a clear idea of what it is I wanted to do. And so I think that made my law school search more challenging. So I got into some law schools, but I didn't understand back then why I wasn't getting into like MIT, because I had good grades and in college, and I was a smart kid, and like from a book smart perspective. But that's not how the world works. There's more to it than just what you know. There's more to it than whether you can do triple integrals or whatever the case may be. There has to be you have to be able to connect with people. So I think if you're thinking about law school, you have to find a way in writing to connect with someone on the other side and make them understand, find a way to get through to them on why this thing is important to you. And so I was fortunate enough to have some good grades and be able to get into a couple law schools. I think I got into 3 or 4, but again, not until later in life did I realize that I could have maybe taken some other paths and opened some opportunities if I'd done a better job of explaining who I was. So, but to take that, by no means am I regretting Wake Forest. I think it's turned out great for me. But from a general premise, if you're looking at a broad range of schools, that would be my advice: is make sure you make yourself known on that piece of paper instead of just answering a bunch of questions in kind of a robotic way. But okay, where else were we going with that?
Okay. Well, okay. So you went through law school. Did you know in law school that you wanted to become a divorce attorney, or did you learn much about mediation even back then? I mean, what were you?
No, I didn't know anything. And so my perspective may be unique to me, but it is. And that's what it ties into what I was saying before, which is I went to school to avoid immediately going to work because I still had some figuring out to do. And this is another byproduct of me not doing a job of telling others who I was. So when I got out of law school, I was I think in the top 25% maybe of the class. So, fine, not fantastic,
but that's good.
Just fine, right? And I struggled to get a job. And again, the grade thing alone does not translate into work or employment or anything. So what happened was, I think it took me 9 months to find a job. So I took whatever came, right? And the person that hired me was a divorce law firm. Mm-hmm. And so I took it. I'm like, I got to make money. I got to start paying. My student loans are coming due in December. The first payment, I'm sure I can defer it, but my parents taught me not to carry debt if I could help it. And so I had to, start making money to pay the bills. And so I kind of fell into the divorce law realm by accident. And 20-something years later, I'm still doing it. And I think I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
My colleagues tell me I'm pretty good at it, and they hire me to mediate their cases. But to answer that question, no, I didn't know anything about mediation at that point. I didn't know it was even a thing I could get into or do. And I didn't know that, and I'm going to tell you all this is a little secret, but I didn't know that in a lot of aspects of the law, you don't even need to have certain qualifications. You could just do it if you happen to be good at talking to people and building equity. Let's see, someone's asking a question. Yes. Do you want to answer that, or do you want to?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess you're the guest, so you can take a stab at it. So Tony is a frequent commenter here. Do you do well, yeah, both of us do mediation. We're both certified by the Dispute Resolution Commission, which is the statewide organization in charge of certifying mediators. How does a case become a mediated one? What is mediation like? Is it adversarial? Do the courts honor the outcome? Okay, go ahead.
All right. So I do maybe 65% of my job is mediation. So that means I get in between two attorneys or two clients, and I help them try to figure out their own solution to a case. And it becomes mediated at any point in time. And what that means is there doesn't have to be a lawsuit. There just has to be a dispute. Two people or more people have to disagree about what to do next in a legal aspect or in a school setting or in life or anything. So don't necessarily think about mediation only in the context of a legal dispute. It's any dispute between two people that need some help in trying to find a solution. So more on that in just a moment. A case can become mediated, meaning a litigated, something where someone files a lawsuit can become, will likely go to mediation, because now in North Carolina, at least, it's court order. The courts require you to try to resolve your own disputes prior to soaking up the time and resources of the court system. And they do that. There's a couple different tracks, and Judy mentioned both of them. One is a superior court mediation, and the other one is a family financial mediation. Superior court is a controversy that exceeds, I think, what, $25,000 now?
Yeah.
Or do they move it up to 50? There's some threshold that brings it up into superior court realm. And you have to have, if you're going to mediate a superior court case, you do have to have certain credentials. So if there's a lawsuit that's been filed, the state has put some minimum threshold requirements, including certification. But if a lawsuit has not been filed, anyone on the street can literally anyone on the street can mediate a case if they can convince the parties to hire them to do so.
Like a counselor, a pastor, therapist.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, you probably mediate right now for free whenever you're helping friends get through something, or your parents or family members or whoever it is. So you've already probably done mediation, you just didn't know. Mediation, I think, is adversarial in the sense of people are throwing stones and rocks and legal arguments at you, the mediator, and it's not directed to you, it's directed to the other side, but you're the conduit and the catcher's mitt for all those arguments. So it takes, I think, a skill set that's beyond just the law, and I'll pause on that and talk about that in a minute too. And the answer to the last question is, do the courts honor the outcomes of mediation? Yeah, because there's only two outcomes of a mediation, and one of them is impasse, meaning you didn't reach a settlement, and the other one is settlement. And what I'm saying that because the mediator does not determine the outcome of a mediation. The mediator is not the decision maker. The mediator is the facilitator of opening a conversation that leads the parties to their own settlement. In an arbitration, that's different. That is where the arbitrator is making a decision. There's referees and other things that do make decisions, like a judge, but the mediator is leading and doing their job by influence only. So no decision-making power in my hands in those situations. So let me talk to you about a couple of those other things, right? I'm going to give a shout out to this guy, Roy Baroff. He's someone that's called an ombudsman. So he, for instance, I think he does a lot of work, and Judy, you're nodding your head, so you
I know him.
Clarify, right, if I'm getting it wrong, but he does a lot of, like he'll go into schools, and if there's a dispute between faculty members or department heads or department and a lower faculty member, he will go in and try to smooth those relationships over, because those are long-term relationships, hopefully, and we can't just have people throwing stones at each other and expect to have a productive department. And so that's a very maybe poor rendition of what an ombudsman is, but my point to you is it's not a legal dispute, it's a relationship problem. And so Roy is fixing relationships by mediating that matter, that dispute, and he's very good at it. So if you just kind of think back to the last 30 days of your life, you will probably find at least 5 instances where you've done some kind of mediation, unless you talk to nobody. And so maybe if you don't talk to anybody, maybe not. So hopefully I've answered your question. If I haven't, just pop another one up and I'll try to make sure I clarify as much as that.
On that note, okay, so since you and I did not take any classes about mediation, I didn't even learn about alternative dispute resolution, in law school. So how did you improve your skills or really hone this skill to be an effective mediator?
I'm going to it hurts me to do this, but I'm going to give credit to my old boss. He made me take a lot of non-standard legal continuing legal education stuff. So I think to become a mediator, one of the most important things you can do is take some communication classes. And I think lawyers are good at talking at people, right? We want to convince someone else of our position by being strong and forthright and saying this is the law in a convincing manner. That doesn't work in mediation, I don't think. So the communication you need in mediation is building equity with the people at the table, helping them see that you're there to find or generate or have them generate their own solutions. And some of that's like an air of authority, okay? But I rarely, I'll use the authority thing as the last resort. And what I mean by that is the last thing I'll say is, hey, I've been practicing law for 20 years. That has never happened in the courtroom. And you need to just give up on that. Like, I will not say that if I can help it. And I rarely do I have to get to that level. And when I do get to that level, it kind of means I've told myself I've failed because that's not the point of the mediation. I'm trying to help other people see why doing something different or resolving that dispute is a good thing. And that means thinking outside, generating solutions by thinking outside the box. That means opening that person up who doesn't know you at all to share their life and their problem and trust that you are there to help them, even though you're not on their side. And all that has nothing to do with the law. It has to do with your ability to communicate with them and bridge a gap and do it all at once. So I shouldn't say this but I'll do it anyway. I kind of look at mediation as I have to be schizophrenic. I have to learn how to talk to the attorney and their client and the other attorney and that other attorney's client in 4 different ways, right? I have to mold myself when I'm talking to each individual person in a different way to connect with them best, right? So if you have that, exuberant, boisterous, outgoing personality, you have to change how you talk so they can connect with you quickly. And if you have the shy, introverted person who you got to drag everything out of, well, you got to give them some space. And if you got the attorney that's just a bulldog and don't want to listen to anyone, well, guess what? You might have to be a bulldog right back and say, well, tell me the last 3 times it's happened to you in court, But it's this, like, I do look at myself as I have to be schizophrenic in that mediation. But everything I just said has nothing to do with my knowledge of the law or my experience with other attorneys or the court system or anything. It's about communication. And I think that is the one biggest skill you can build in how to talk with people and not at them. The law teaches you how to talk at people, not with them. You got to go find that skill set somewhere else or just naturally have it. So that's the only thing I would tell you to do if you want to become an effective mediator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's cool
do you have
is
any
that,
opinion about that?
Yeah, I mean, what's great is that now that we need to take these continuing mediator education classes, so much of it is free and available on the internet. Like, I was just watching something offered by some local bar association that's on YouTube for anybody to, well, I don't know if it's like easily accessible, but there's a lot of free material out there. And it's always very interesting because we don't learn these things in law school or even just as regular attorneys. Yeah. But you're so right. It's like a totally different way of communicating with people when you're the mediator, as opposed to, supposedly being some loud, bombastic attorney in court trying to argue for your client.
Yeah. And it's useful in more than just the law, right? I think it's useful. It's a useful skill to develop in life in general. Not to say you should feel like you're schizophrenic when you're talking to other people, but I'm saying learning how to connect with people that you already like even better can be helpful. So it's not just the mediation context that you can use this stuff.
Okay.
What do we have?
I'm sorry. I'm clicking. Okay, hold on. Let's answer her first question. She has a couple of questions. Okay, so she says, "Hi, Mr. Soni. I wonder what makes you want to stay in a smaller legal market like NC as opposed to perhaps practicing law in a larger market like Chicago. What are pros and cons?"
So, Serena, interestingly enough, I don't look at my market where I live as a small market. Charlotte's where I live it's got, I think, a mill metro and then maybe another mill beyond that. So looking at a couple million people, it's growing pretty quickly. I didn't choose to stay in a smaller market like Winston-Salem or maybe Greensboro or something like that on purpose. That's not, I think that's the remnants of that Chicago suburb in me. Like I don't think I could do small town like that or smaller town like that. Before I got to Charlotte, I was in Raleigh, so I practiced in the biggest two cities in North Carolina. The Why didn't I go back to like a larger market? I think that for me, that was not a lifestyle that made a lot of sense. So I've never worked in one of those multinational law firms or 1,000 lawyer law firms. So I can only speak from other folks that I know or guessing or the internet or read like Above the Law and some other folks, other blogs. But I didn't want to work, 100 hours a week or 90 hours a week or 110 hours a week. That wasn't going to be something that was going to work for me. I'm not a guy that can successfully like suck up to other people all the time. So like climbing the corporate legal chain or ladder was not gonna, like, I was going to lose because I will tell someone to their face what I think of them, and I'll tell them the truth and not like sugarcoat it just to get more money or a higher position. I can't play those games. I didn't want to hang out with big firm partners after hours. They don't want to hang out with me either. I couldn't care less about some of the things that they wanted to talk about. This is my perception, right? Yeah. And so everything about the good thing about those jobs, I guess, is you make a gigantic amount of money. But the bad thing is if it doesn't fit your personality and what your goals are and what you want to accomplish, then I think it's just, why put yourself through unhappiness? And I'm not telling you that I knew my goals coming out of law school, but I knew that wasn't going to work for me. There are other challenges I had that I think piggyback off that. So early on, I didn't do a good job. I didn't utilize mentors, right? Even in law school, and I should have. They would have told me, Ketan, don't use your email as lawyer@corrupt.net. So I'm a big tech guy, and I had a buddy who owned corrupt.net, and I thought it was funny to put lawyer@corrupt.net as my email address. Well, that was dumb, right? But I didn't know that back then. Bad. And like other things like that also didn't put me as a good fit for a larger firm in a larger market or things like that. If money is your motivating factor, there's plenty of ways to make lots of money as a lawyer, and not even just be like practicing law, but other ways too. But I think you have to, if you're able to, right, put yourself towards opportunities that meet your goals. And big firm life for me was not anywhere near a goal that I wanted to have. Yeah. So there's no easy answer to that. I mean, there's no easy answer to figuring out what your goals can be or should be, except start talking about it now, right? If you're not in law school, take a day to say, what do I want to be when I grow up? I still ask myself the same question now, and it changes. So I've got this goal of doing something else in maybe a decade or so, because I don't always want to be doing mediation, even though I love it.
But you're good at it. You've become known as one of the.
I'm gonna have a little guest speaker here. This is my Can you say hi? Because she just barges in our room, but that's okay.
Yay! Now she's on YouTube.
By the way, that's another reason why I don't want to be in a gigantic law firm, right? So I can actually be here and spend time with kiddos and family and all that kind of stuff. So again, that's my goal. You got to figure out what your own goals are. All right, give me 1 second. Let me escort her out here.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Okay.
So a question about what challenges did
Sam,
you experience or
Sam,
have you
can you
experienced?
help me out?
Oops.
Okay.
We have to take him off his family here. So, okay, we'll take him off the screen for a little bit. Okay, is he back? Okay, you are back. Okay, so so Serena follows up asking, what challenges did you experience or have you experienced? Has the minority situation improved over the years?
I didn't really face a lot of challenges. I don't think there. I think that there probably stuff out there that prevented me from doing certain things, but I don't know if I actually encountered them right to my face. I think one of the wonderful things today is diversity is appreciated. There's a lot of folks out there that are advocating, like I know Judy does advocate for culture and um, and for women and for everything. And so I think it has improved. But maybe I've just been very fortunate. So even thinking about 9/11 for a minute, right? I know that's an odd kind of connection, but I was in Raleigh. There's not a lot of Indian lawyers, and I heard stories after 9/11 of a lot of people who are Indian being verbally attacked or shunned or people throwing stuff at them sometimes. And I had there's one thing that happened to me, and it wasn't even direct. I think the person talking didn't even know what he was saying, like that I was sitting there writing. He didn't understand that the words he was using were kind of directed to me as a culture. But I've never faced anything from that discrimination standpoint. I think I've just been really fortunate because I know it exists. I know other people are dealing with this kind of stuff all the time. But I've just been really lucky, I think. And maybe it's because people know how I'd react if they try to do something like that to me. Maybe it's because I'm oblivious, because I know for a fact that people are discriminated against. I do think we're in a time, I'm going to probably get in trouble for saying this, but again, that's okay. I think we're at a stage of country development where we're almost like overcorrecting for minority stuff. And what I mean by that is it feels to me it's not PC to say anything about anybody anymore. And I don't like that. I want people to be, if someone, again, it's going to sound weird, if someone wants to discriminate against me, I want them to say it. I want to know it so I can know how to react and work around that person or work through them or deal with whoever I got to deal with. But I feel like today it's almost like no one can say anything negative about anybody, and I don't prefer that. So I'm going off on a tangent. I do think, from a minority standpoint, we're in good shape. There's a lot of folks advocating, and they need to keep advocating. So now's a great time.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure you just being there as part of the legal community and making your presence known, that probably helps, change people's mindsets when they're like, oh, I don't really care that my attorney is like Asian or Indian or whatever, like they just want a great attorney.
Yeah.
And they can appreciate you for that.
I would hope so, yeah.
Speaking of that, yeah, I know I referred somebody through a friend to you recently, and my friend said that her friend was very grateful to you because that person felt like you understood the immigrant experience and the problems they were having with their parents and all that stuff. So sometimes it is good to have more diversity in the legal profession where maybe somebody feels more comfortable with you. Yeah. So Tony is asking, if someone wants to bring a case to you, what would an ideal client have prepared during the consultation?
Ideally, they fill out the intake form beforehand and upload all the documents associated with their case and write out a 1-page biographical history. That I think has happened to me twice in my career, though.
Yeah, people don't
So
like to do that homework. Yeah.
they don't, and they're scared, right? It's not. I think that first of all, if you're trying to refer a case to me, great, thank you. I'm not worried about getting more information in advance. I look at that meeting as a two-way vet, right? As a vetting two ways. One is the person sitting across the table from me someone that I want to represent? And I don't know if like sending me your bank statements in advance is going to tell me that answer. The answer is no, it won't. And then I'm looking, the second part of that meeting is the person on the other side has to figure out if I'm a good fit for them. And I don't get into too much detail about what's going to happen in the case at the beginning. I want to have a conversation, find out if we're a good fit. And so, like, having them be ready to talk about what's going on and what's important to them and what their goals are, to me, is the most important thing for a client to have prepared. Like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you need me to help you fix and get through? And if you can ascertain that, that really makes more of a difference than anything else. Because I will tell you if I can accomplish those goals. And I will tell you, hey, I'm not a good fit for you if I'm not a good fit. I don't want your money if you're just going to be unhappy with me in 3 months. I'd rather send you to someone that's more aligned to what you're trying to accomplish, that thinks that maybe you can accomplish that goal. So to put a pin on that, so I got a partner. He does almost all of our litigation work at this point because he likes to do that. I don't mind it, but I'd rather help people figure stuff out and put their lives back together in a way that they can move on. And like my partner Andrew, he wants that too, but he'd rather just avoid talking to attorneys all the time about trying to settle the case, because a lot of the stuff that he does, the attorney on the side doesn't want to settle the case, or the client on the other side doesn't want to settle the case, and so he doesn't want to waste too much time thinking about it. So, so the fit is, to me, the driving factor. And if it's not a good fit, and I find out and I'll figure it out usually in the first meeting or so, then I will send them to someone else. And that's okay. There's plenty of people that need help. So try to take the folks that are not going to drive you crazy, because it's a tough world out there. I mean, it's not an easy profession. And we if you're going to become a lawyer and even a mediator, like we got to stick together in the sense of supporting each other, because does anyone like lawyers? I mean, no one. You need to have a lawyer maybe at some point, but does anyone actually enjoy having a meeting with their lawyer?
They just want to make fun of lawyers until they need one for themselves.
That's right. And in fact, they wait too long, right? They're like, oh, I can fix it myself. They end up making it worse, and then they blame us for charging them money.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because people don't want to pay, right? Like I just had another guy tell me recently that, oh, well, I found some stuff on the internet. I'm like, okay, you go for it. Do your own separation agreement. You don't want to pay me. Use what you found on Google. That's right. Yeah, and the Good Google, luck. Oh my, the self-made lawyers on Google that clients become is insane. It's like, how many times, Judy, are you meeting with someone? They're like, well, Texas, according to Google, does this. I'm like, okay, well, you live in Texas. What do you want me to do about it? Go move to Texas. Yeah, or they say like, well, my friend got this. My friend in her divorce, blah, blah, and the friend is in California. Right. Yeah. So I can't remember what the question was, but. Well, now she's asking what you're talking about, which is what do you like and dislike about practicing family law? Yeah, so I that's an easy answer. I do get some personal satisfaction about helping someone move on. And that doesn't mean like move on mentally from the relationship, but like being able to close a financial or custody chapter where they don't have to like stay up in the middle of the night
worrying about what's going to happen next. I want to help them get closure. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I love mediation, is because it lets me help people get closure more frequently than just representing them as an attorney. And I do both, right? I do go to court with my partner on like bigger stuff. We tag team it. I do resolve lots of cases for my clients, and then I resolve cases for other people's clients in the mediation context. And that closure actually makes me feel like I'm doing something important for other folks. What I dislike is the negative perception of family lawyers out there, that a lot of us are grifters and we're just, trying to take everyone's money, but without the appreciation on the other side of how much work we do that they don't see, how much work we've taken in the past to get to where we are from an experience level. And it's lost on folks. And that's not their fault, right? I'm saying that's a thing I wish they could understand better, but they don't, because they have their own lives to deal with. I also don't like in family law the way the court system is structured, right? And it's not the judge's faults, but this is the idea that we're going to take two parents, right? And we're going to put them in a room together and let them throw all the negative stuff about each other against the wall to see what sticks in front of that judge. And then the judge has to take all that negativity and say, okay, here's the decision I'm making about your kids for the next 15 years, right? And then you're supposed to go co-parent after that? How the heck, after hearing all this bad stuff that's being said about you by the other person, including experts and therapists and custody evaluators, are you supposed to successfully co-parent, work together with this person who just said all this nasty stuff about you? It's set up for failure, and I don't like that. I wish I could fix things, and to the degree I can, I try. I do. So one of the things about me is I'm a big dork, and I told you I love math and science, but I also love Excel and like minor level coding or scripting. And so I built these tools to help people function better in the family law world. So there's like a child support calculator that I put together, and that reflects the guidelines of North Carolina and this custody thing and other stuff. And so that brings me a little bit more, not joy, but contentment about I'm doing something to improve, even if it's an incremental level, improve the way that family law works. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff that needs fixing. The court system, especially on custody, is a huge one. I really hate that. I really do. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to fix it because I don't get to. Remember I said like pick your goals and your path and career. Like in my head, I would love to be a legislator and fix stuff, but then I think nope. Those legislators are like all those people working at the big firms, and they all just work on relationships, and I'm not doing that because that will make me miserable. So someone else is going to have to fix the legislation and the laws, and people are working on it, right? People are working on how to make it better. And I don't know the answer, but I hate that part of family law. I really do. Yeah, I really do. And I do. And then the second part I hate a lot is I think it is easy for people to get taken advantage of. Give me 1 second. Okay. It is difficult. It is common, I think, for people to get taken advantage of on a financial level. Most people, whether you're in a marriage or not, are not fantastic or great or even good with money and managing their own stuff. And if you're not good with those things and you're putting your trust in an attorney, for instance, well, the attorney may not be good with those things either. And so I do see some troubling financial stuff that I wish I could fix. And maybe someone will at some point, but it's not going to be me at the moment. So maybe in my next career.
What do you mean, like in terms of the way the attorneys are charging the clients, or just in the way people handle their finances as a couple before their divorce?
No, it's not how attorneys are charging. It is about. I'm going to rewind to like 20 years ago in my career, right? So I was trying to advise. People are hiring me to advise them about how to deal with like financial support and how much they should get, and how to divide up assets and all that kind of stuff. Well, and I was pretty good with money. I'm much better now. But like, if you don't have any life experience, right? And you're just saying, well, I'm going to go get you $5,000 a month from the other person because they make 150. Well, you have no context in really understanding what that means. You probably don't have any context of like how much it takes to live at that, and probably your mid 20s. You may not have a family yet, so you don't know how much it costs to raise kids and all that kind of stuff. And there's just a gap, right? But to the general public out there, you're not investigating your attorney about how many kids they have and how good they are with finances. You're just looking at what Avo and Google and Martindale tell you to do, or your friends who are referring cases. No, sorry, referring attorneys because some person on Facebook sent it. So there's a gap of like knowledge tied to experience and helping people in a divorce context move forward. And the law doesn't require us to be good with finances or know how to advise people or tell them what to do. It just says you have to have this degree, and that magically tells you that you're capable or competent to represent someone. Does that make sense? That's the point I'm trying to make about that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we definitely need more continuing legal education classes, especially for the younger attorneys. Like how do you even look at these financial statements and the tax returns and, like what does it mean to, to be able to even refinance a home? You're right. A lot of it is life experience and also knowing more about the financial aspects of everything besides just the legal things, to be able to advise people in divorces. Okay, well, we still have a lot of questions. Okay, so Tony asks, what are domestic violence cases like? Are they all criminal? No, it's not criminal. It's actually in the civil context here in North Carolina. What sorts of things happen in North Carolina to protect the victims and the rights of the accused? Yeah. Well, I mean, do you handle domestic violence cases?
We do.
Mhm.
There, lots of counties have victims assistance programs in place. So, for instance, if you're going to domestic violence court as a party, not as an attorney, right? I think Wake County does this. I know Montgomery County does. They'll have like someone who's not an attorney come and sit with you, right, while you're waiting, and give you some just physical support, sit next to you. So I think some of that happens. It's if you're successful in obtaining a domestic violence protective order, there are pretty good protections, but it's also just a piece of paper. So violating a domestic violence protective order will land you in jail. So that's a protection to me. They're not, like Judy said, they're not criminal. If there's there could be some, like if something happens, if an incident happens, the victim has to go to the magistrate or to the court system and get a domestic violence protective order. Layered on top of that, if the police were called, for instance, the police may issue their own charges through the district attorney, and that you'll have criminal and a civil case kind of running parallel. And so there's a lot, I don't want to get into it all because there's a lot of complexity or intricacy with that particular, those two things together, but they're not all criminal. There are protections for victims of domestic violence. There's also requirements for abusers the judges can require the abuser to attend classes, anger management, any kind of stuff. If there's alcohol involved, the statutes now allow for the judges to order alcohol treatment, assessments, things of that nature. So there's a wide swath of reasons why domestic violence stuff happens. Sadly, I think COVID made it worse because it kept people in the same house together with nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I think kids were probably impacted more than we know at this point because they were homeschooling, right? Either seeing this stuff happen or being forced to be continued. They didn't have the school as an outlet, right, to do reporting when domestic violence was happening, or no one else could. I mean, when you're homeschooling, you're virtual. Sorry, you just don't get to see what's happening in those homes. So hopefully, you're gonna know where I stand a little politically here. If everyone gets vaccinated, maybe we can have good lives again one day and be able to interact with each other.
Yeah, well,
Not
definitely.
today.
I do feel like I got more phone calls from people who were having marital problems, and then also, potential domestic violence situations within the last year and a half. So it is like more of an issue now with all these families that are really being stressed out. So as Ketan said, there are kind of like two parallel cases. Like there are some situations where it wasn't so bad to the point where anyone called the police, but the person can still make a petition to get a domestic violence protective order, even if the person didn't actually hit the other person, like just screaming and yelling and throwing stuff near their head, to intimidate them, or almost punching them in the face to intimidate somebody, making verbal threats. That can also typically be bad enough to warrant getting a protective order. And in my city, probably pretty much every bigger city in North Carolina, we have legal aid, which will provide a free attorney to represent the victim of domestic violence, regardless of the person's income. And so normally people will get a legal aid attorney that will help them. And then the person who's accused, first there's an ex parte hearing, which means that the other person is not there. The accused person is not there, but oftentimes a judge will just listen to the victim and then say, okay, you get an ex parte order, but you have to come back within 10 days for the actual hearing. And that's where the alleged abuser does have the right to have usually it's a man, but his or her legal counsel to defend himself. And then it's up to the judge to decide, should there really be a protective order? And normally it's for a year. Sometimes it's for 6 months, where the person has to stay away from the person's home and where they work, away from children's daycare if children are involved. So yeah, there are some attorneys that really do a lot more domestic violence cases. Sometimes
you can get
accused.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can play both roles. I mean, and sometimes, like I do, sometimes I've assisted people who are being abused versus, defending the person who's been wrongfully accused. So there are two sides to every story.
Well, and you can also get one on behalf of your children, right? So if someone didn't attack you, like a spouse or a relationship, a significant other attack you, but threaten harm to your children, you can get one on their behalf. But it's also, as Judy said, it's not only physical assault. The statutes also say that if behavior by one party rises to the level of to inflict substantial emotional distress, meaning like there might have never been a physical interaction between the two parties, but if someone's causing enough behavior over a period of time to cause emotional distress, that can also qualify for a domestic violence protective order. It is more difficult to prove, I think, but it is out there. So there's people smart about how they abuse other folks, and the laws do protect even those folks in those circumstances. So, yeah, but so I do some of that, but there's some people that are dedicated to it. That's pretty much all they do is domestic violence stuff. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And another question, what years have been the hardest times for you in your career? What happened? What step? Yeah. Well, yeah, for example, you haven't really talked much about your career progression, because it sounded like you worked for that divorce firm in Raleigh first, and then what happened that caused you to move to Charlotte?
So I moved to Charlotte with the same firm to open up a branch office down here.
Okay.
I think the hardest times, though, were probably that first 10 years of my career. When I first took that job, I thought in my head, hey, look, all these people online, legal recruiters, they're looking for, 2 to 5 years experience. I said to myself, look, let me just get 2 years and then I'll start looking and get out of this divorce stuff because I don't really want to do it. And I'll find a better job and move up and, start doing something that's going to make me happier. And I think what happened is I got sucked into that pattern, that life thing. And looking back, it's worked out okay, right? It's worked out fine. But during that period of time, the early years out of law school, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't reach out to other folks. I didn't really hang out with a lot of people. I was just stuck in this cycle of working all the time, even though that's not what I wanted to do, right? And I just kept telling myself, I just got to stick it out for a little bit of time and it'll get better. But not until I actually took proactive steps to make it better did things actually get better. So what I'd say is I thought just by the passage of time something would change, and that's not how it worked for me. We have to take some steps and and recognize the things that I had to recognize the things that didn't make me happy and find things that did make me happy and move towards those proactively. Um, and that's tough, especially if you're isolated and working all the time and not making a lot of money and doing something you think you don't want to do all at once. And so that was one of those negatives of moving away, right? If I had family around me, maybe that would have been different, but I didn't. And so I think that's a con to me moving away from the Chicago suburb area. But after I started kind of recognizing, um, and look, again, to be blunt about it, like what happens is like I started drinking more. That doesn't help, by the way. It makes you more unhappy. And um and just thought, hey, if I work harder, maybe that'll make it better. Nope, that don't work either. It's gotta be something internal that you want to change. That I would suggest you don't let the job define you, right? You got to figure out who and what you want to be and drive towards that or walk or run or take baby steps. I don't like something you have to make the movement towards that. But your label on the job, I think, won't make you happy. You won't get your satisfaction that you're looking for there, probably. At least I didn't. And so unhappiness, I think, breeds unhappiness. And that was really tough for me to get out of. I finally did. Hopefully you can tell I'm much happier now. Kind of can write my ticket the way I want to write it. And that means work, at a moderate amount, get to be home and spend time with the family and do other projects that I think are cool, like, coding or scripting Excel stuff. And that works for me, right? So I finally got to the place where I wanted to be. But it's easy to get down in that hole. There are a lot of resources that the state bar has, PALs and all that kind of stuff. But quite frankly, if you can just read, tell you what, if you're a lawyer or you're thinking about law school and 5 years down the road you become a lawyer and you're miserable, send me a text or give me a call. I'll try to talk to you at least and see what I can do to help you out.
That's
but
nice.
Reaching out to someone and making a connection, I think, is probably the best thing to help work through those hard times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just in case people out there don't know, so Ketan worked for at least a couple of law firms before you went out on your own with your law partner. So now you have your own practice, right?
Yeah, I spent 11 years with a Rosen law firm. Then I spent like a year and a half on my own. Then 7 more years with another law firm. And then the last, right a month before COVID hit in the States, I opened up this law firm. So it's me and my partner, and we run it. And kind of like moving to North Carolina, I'm never looking back. Probably never work for anyone else. I can do things the way I want to, and it's great. So
yeah, same here. Yeah. Okay. So Serena's other question is, how frequently do you take clients who have already obtained an attorney? Do you have to obtain any info from the client's existing attorney or start a case from scratch?
Not frequently. I kind of alluded to the fact that sometimes I still go to the courtroom rather, and litigate cases, and those cases are often business owners, bigger cases, and more complex issues. And I think I'm known for my skills with Excel and math and figuring out those complex things. And so usually someone finds me or my partner after they've already talked to another attorney and spent a year or two litigating with the other person, and they're not getting anywhere. So nothing against the other attorneys, but I'm getting a lot of those cases kind of secondhand. But the majority of, one of my biggest advocates is my wife. There's I talked about Facebook earlier. There's this like Facebook moms group, and she's able to say, hey, my husband's an attorney. If you need help, here's his contact information. right? So I get a lot of stuff from that, and I got a lot of stuff from my professional referral sources. So most of my stuff is kind of brand new. And then, of course, the mediation stuff is all brand new every single time. So when you walk into a mediation, you don't know anything about the case. You're walking in blind and you got to figure it out from scratch. So every day I'm mediating, like tomorrow, tomorrow afternoon, I'll learn about the case for the first time.
Okay. Yeah, we got so many questions here. Okay. Let me know if you need to leave. Okay. Because I know you
I'll
have
probably do about like 5 minutes or so, but I got some time.
Sure.
And
Okay.
you can give my email address if you guys want to email questions that I don't answer. I'm happy to get you a response later on.
Okay. So this is his website or his direct, profile. So you can reach him through his website. So Ketan Soni is an attorney in Charlotte, North Carolina. What counties do you cover?
I go everywhere. I practiced in Raleigh for 5 years, so I know a lot of those folks up there. But we'll go the entire state. So we've had clients out in Wilmington, and I just can't go outside North Carolina at this point.
Wow.
And don't plan to. So.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I'm just sticking to Wake and Durham now. I don't really have the desire to drive an hour or more,
Everything's virtual now, right? So I don't have to drive either. Just, hey, let's hop on a Zoom, and if I'm going to court, we'll meet you out there, and no big deal. So.
Okay. Jaden wants to know, when did you decide to create your private practice? So he said that happened right before COVID happened. So what, a couple of years to a year and a half ago?
Yeah, so we opened our doors on February 17th, was the Monday of 2020. I decided to open, and that was the second time I did it. The first time was kind of a blip on the radar. But the reason I did it the second time is my other partners and I from the other firm, we couldn't kind of figure out how our relationship was going to be going forward from a financial perspective. And we worked really hard. I think we spent 6 or more months trying to map out different scenarios. They had those partners they did like personal injury and corporate law and estate planning and things of that nature. And they're just different practice areas. And we couldn't figure out a solution that worked for everybody. So after exploring that, Andrew and I, my partner now, who also does family law and business litigation, we mapped out our own path. But I give you that extra context because I think there is, if you find the right people, there is value to having other folks to work with. I mean, the number of times I'm sitting in a room and Andrew and I just toss ideas back and forth at each other about a case, or talk to each other about what's happening, like in our lives, or hey, I need your help on this. Like not legal issue or non-legal issue is invaluable. And I had that with the other firm. Those were great people to work with. We just couldn't figure out the financial thing. So that's what led me to kind of say, look, we got to do our own thing, part peacefully, and keep good relationships and move on. Mm-hmm. So having someone else to bounce stuff off of is invaluable.
Yeah, that's great. And just getting back to law school, because a lot of people have these kinds of questions, like how did you finance law school, and have you finished paying off your student loans?
Student loans are paid off. Yep, it's been a few years. I took student loans, but I also worked during law school. So 3 things. One is student loans. That was the biggest chunk, right? And law school was much cheaper back then. Comparatively. So I feel sorry if you're entering it now, but you'll get there. Secondly was I had a job through law school. And thirdly, I kept like a ledger of money that my dad and mom lent me. They gave it to me, but I'm like, no, I'm going to pay you back one day. So I didn't tell them, but I said, here's all the money you paid me for law school, and eventually paid them back too. So those are my 3 kind of funding sources. But I didn't spend extra money I didn't have to spend. I didn't go like on trips and buy a bunch of clothes and all. I just kept it on the cheap. I just wanted to get through without having a lot of debt. I hate debt. It's horrible. It's mind-numbingly crushing, and that's my personality. So if debt doesn't bother you, great. But I needed to pay off everything as soon as possible. So I just took out the least amount of money I could.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, how did you balance work? Well, I guess you were talking about working during law school. Like, what kind of work did you do?
That was also wonderful. I worked at the computer lab. I was running the
Ooh,
obviously someone ran the computer lab, but I just sat there for hours and I can fix people's computer problems. So it didn't take me that long. And I think
okay.
I get paid like $15 an hour. It was a pretty good gig.
Yeah, that's
So
great
I didn't
back
work
then.
full time. It wasn't 40 hours. But I think by third year of law school, I kind of figured out what I needed to do and how to pass exams and regurgitate back to professors what they wanted to hear. So I think I worked like 20 hours a week. And I got my work done. And when somebody needed help, I just, helped them out and went back to what I was doing. So for me, it worked out great.
Okay, great. And last question, again, something people ask a lot is, would you recommend going to law school these days? I mean, we talked
No,
about
I
how
would not.
expensive it is.
I would not. I would not. If you're passionate and you know exactly what you want to do coming out, and I don't mean like I want to make $300,000 coming out of law school. That's not. I'm saying that goals thing, right? If this is something that you're passionate about, yeah, find a way to do it. That works because you know where you're headed. But if you were like me 20 something years ago and you didn't know what you wanted to do, I would pause. I would maybe if you're coming right out of undergrad, maybe pause, take a year and go work and see if you like it. I mean, working, right?
Yeah.
And and to see what the like real world looks like before you start delving into school again. If you have no like real solid path. But also, like you said this, Judy, I don't know if the cost, like if you don't know what you're going to do with it, I don't know if the cost is justified by jumping right into law school. I honestly don't know the answer to that. So, with 2 decades of experience now behind me, I would probably pause if I had to do it over again. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I'm saying I would really think that is this what I want to do, and is it going to make me happy?
Hmm.
But I think I didn't do enough thinking about my future and what it really looked like back then. And so that's the pause I would take. Um,
Yeah. So a
I,
decline in law students. I mean, I think that's probably a good thing because I still believe, and I know some people get upset when I say this, but I think at least, a third or even half of all the law schools across America should be shut down. There's not enough jobs. And the funny thing is that, Ketan, I didn't tell you this, but I actually almost worked for one of those firms that you had worked for because I
oh yeah,
interviewed there and they gave me an offer, but I couldn't believe it. They wanted to pay me something like $41,000. Of course, this was probably like around 2003 or something, but I couldn't believe how low the starting. I mean, I wasn't even straight out of law school and they wanted to offer me barely $40,000 to work there full time. I couldn't. I was like, man, why did I go to Georgetown Law School for this?
I made less than that to start. So,
Gosh.
but like within 6 months, it was higher. But still, I mean, it was like I'm with you. It was crazy. It was crazy. Um, so if you're thinking about it, maybe it doesn't hurt to just sit down and like map out. Here's what life looks like. Here's what the cost is going to be. Here's what. Here's how long I'm going to do it. Here's how I'm going to pay for it. And the other piece of this, Judy, is there's a lot of automation stuff happening, right? There's a lot of tech, like there's fintech, right? That's for financial stuff. There's going to be law tech. I mean, there is law tech right now. There's people trying to take as much of this job away from us in a good way. I mean that in a good way, that we are not always good at, like the financial stuff. So in 5 years, it's not going to be wildly different, but it's going to be different. And if you don't have the skill set or the professional contacts or whatever it is to generate a whole bunch of money, well, we're going to be commoditized. So that's not good.
Yeah, and then we still have, legal Zoom or Rocket Lawyer or whatever out there, people trying to generate their own separation agreements or wills
Right.
and, power of attorneys. Yeah. Well, another question, and then we'll probably have to end it here. But what do you enjoy most about practicing in North Carolina?
Uh, in the family law realm, there are a bunch of it's a solid community of people. There's definitely some fringe folks that I don't want to talk to if I can't help it, but we're a really great community of family lawyers across North Carolina, and that makes a difference. There's other practice areas I think where folks don't get along, or you never run across the same people over and over again, and it's just another face and the name across the screen or across the courtroom. But I have cases against people on a frequent basis. The people I like, we can work stuff out in a reasonable fashion, even though we disagree, and that makes a huge difference. So it's that relationship thing that I keep coming back to that does make a difference. And I don't know if you'd get that in New York and Chicago and some of those other gigantic cities.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think that makes a huge difference for the North Carolina stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Everybody's saying thank you for your time and sharing your expertise and your experiences with us. So I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast. And if you want to stay on for a couple of seconds so I can say goodbye personally, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. See you at the next live stream on Friday. We're going to have my friend and attorney Dominique Williams on as a guest again. So he's going to talk about what to do if you're injured in an auto accident, and talk about, should more Black students or people of color go to law school. So that'll be interesting on Friday. Yeah. Thank you guys all for being here.